Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, according to where you're joining us from. My name's Louisa Munson, and I'm here today with my good friend, Rick Pursell. And how is it with you today, Rick, where you are? It looks like it's a gorgeous day.
It's a little bit overcast, very, very beautiful temperature, a nice breeze. Now and again, it'll tinkle the wind chimes in front of my office. So
Yeah, I've heard them.
it's
They
all
sound really
good.
nice.
It's all good.
So you're in deepest, darkest Bali, or lightest, brightest Bali. You're right in the middle there.
I think more the latter than the former.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
yes, up in the mountains, fresh air, and being renewed and regenerated by Mother Nature. We are right on the edge of the jungle here.
Yeah.
So we get that all of that renewable overnight energy that the trees and the bamboos soak up, that which needs to be transferred into energy and oxygen. It's lovely.
Yeah, I hear you there. I'm sat.
Mm,
It looks like I'm sat with a green screen, which I am, but I'm actually sat in the middle of over an acre of beautiful woodland, high in the hills of Portugal. So we really are coming to you like fresh from Mother Nature. And
yes.
we've got another one of our conversations, haven't we, today? And today, I think I put the title as "Freeing Yourself from Recurrent Patterns or Recurring Patterns."
Mm.
Is this something you've done quite a lot for yourself or the people you work with, Rick?
Everybody I work with, I've done prior work on myself,
Ah,
and
oh,
this is based on what I think I may have mentioned it before. Wisdom is gained through knowledge and practical experience.
yep,
Right? You can have knowledge about something but have never experienced it. And you can experience something quite profound and not really understand or be knowledgeable about it. When you marry those two together, it's wisdom. And
so
that's
it's
the
knowledge.
place.
Did you say no?
Sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
writing this down so I can put it in the show notes.
Right.
Wisdom gained from knowledge and experience, was it?
Yeah, practical experience plus
Correct.
knowledge equals wisdom.
Yes.
So that's the place I want to come from.
Hmm.
Right? If I have any credibility, I need to have been through a similar situation, a traumatic situation, a painful situation,
Yeah.
a loss, a death of a loved one, all of those things. Now, the only childbirth I've been through is my own, and I don't remember a lot about that. So I'm at a slight disadvantage when I'm coaching on childbirth, but
Yes.
the rest of the facets of life. I've had an amazing life, and I've rolled my sleeves up and got stuck into it. And as a result of that, I've had a lot of practical experience, and that's what I like to share.
Yeah.
Not something I've read in a book.
Yeah.
It's like if you wanted to climb Mount Everest, would you best talk to somebody that read a book about it, or somebody that actually even made it up to base camp, if not the
Yes.
summit? So
Yes.
that's the sort of people that I go to that have practical wisdom, because it's very credible and it's usable because they've been there. And I invite people into my sphere of activities along those lines.
Yes, I love what you've just shared there because like, we both work as coaches, don't we?
Yes.
In our own ways, we are, I guess, assisting humanity with whatever they need at the time that they need it. On a person, I'm just working with a person by person, but I know you do groups as well, don't you?
Well, I
Um,
have worked. I spent 10 years running retreats here once a month. There was about 120 retreats. So you could call those
That's
groups,
that's
definitely.
that's a lot of people, isn't it?
It
Yeah,
is.
I think it is. I think it is true that we need to work with these energies ourselves. I guess when we're coaching people or sort of engaged in that process, if we haven't been through it, we might not recognize all the signs of what people might be going through.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. Or at least touched upon it. I mean,
yeah,
we haven't all gone out and committed horrific crimes,
yeah, that's
but
something I can't really talk about. However,
yeah,
I do know that I haven't always been honest.
yes, yeah. And we know inherently, even a child knows when they're causing harm,
Yeah,
or you know, transgressing the mores of society or doing something that is illegal, stealing the first batch of toffees or something like that. We inherently, I think we are all inherently good, and we know when we have strayed off that path.
Yeah, definitely. So, recurrent patterns then, I mean, how do they come about in the first place, do you think? Is there a good purpose to them? Because, in the same way that you say that I think people are inherently good, I also think that even our most self-sabotaging aspects of our personality must have a good purpose somewhere down the line. So how do you think these recurrent patterns show up in the first place? Is there a good underlying reason for them?
Not only a reason, but a cause.
Yeah.
In my corporate work, one of the tasks I had was doing what's called risk assessment, where you take something and you look at what's the risk of this, what's the probability of it happening, what would be the effect of it, and how frequently. And so I've encompassed that in my coaching. I want to get down to the root cause. I don't want just the surface stuff, right? Because that's not going to heal anybody. You might get some liberation from it and a little bit deeper understanding, but unless you get to the core of what's holding that in place, then we haven't fully done our job, right?
Yes.
So we can see our behaviors, right? We can't necessarily see what's underlying it and why we behave this way, just as we can see the behaviors of a person externally, but we don't necessarily see their intention. And they can say all the right things and look right and pretend to be doing these things, but their intention is possibly nefarious or something not untoward to others. So our behaviors are obvious to us, and if we shine the light of consciousness on these behaviors and are prepared to be responsible for them, we will see a recurring pattern. There we go. I've been blaming that person for the way I feel, but look, it's me. It's me. It's me, damn it. I have to take responsibility for it.
Yeah.
So that's the first step. Look at, do you have repetitive behaviors? Not the good ones we're not looking at, although it's great to accept and acknowledge those. But what are the self-destructive or destructive to others? And this comes back to, how might I be causing harm to myself or to other people, or to the environment, or to the earth itself, or equipment and material and future generations?
Yeah, to the collective consciousness. What am I adding into the mix?
That's the first step.
Yeah.
So then we want to look at what is underlying these behaviors. And the path to that, let me go back now to the root cause. We have 5 senses: touch, smell, taste, and a 6th sense of intuition. So these are called our perceptions. So we perceive something about us, what we like. That's a beautiful sunset. Oh, that rubbish is awful in that river. We just perceive with our 5 senses and with our 6th sense of intuition. We sort of know something about it. And when we reinforce these perceptions time and time again, right, we start to form a perspective. This is how it is from my point of view, my viewpoint, from where I'm looking. This is my perspective, because I'm perceiving this, and now I can have an opinion about it. If we continue down this path and keep reinforcing this perspective, right, and it's our perspective, it might be shared with others, but it's our perspective, then we solidify this and make it a belief. I believe this. It's not just opinion. I believe this to be true. or I believe this about myself or about someone else or whatever it is. And from our beliefs will emanate our behaviors.
Yeah.
Right? So we will behave relative to what we believe. Right? Now, not very long ago in occupational health and safety, the current belief, and it was very strong, it was endemic throughout the whole workforce, is I won't have an accident. Somebody else will have it, but I won't.
Yeah.
And if you believe that, then you are likely to do some at-risk behaviours that could lead to an accident. Right?
Yeah, I guess like somebody who might want to steal things will do that if they believe they're never going to get caught.
Exactly.
If they believe they're more clever than the systems in place to prevent them from doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, inevitably, they do something to get caught because they're not curbing their own instincts, which are damaging and harmful. Inevitably, they will mistakenly or accidentally drop. They'll sneeze and pull the handkerchief out the pocket and drop the driver's license right at the scene of the crime, and wonder why the Roz has arrived 5 minutes later when he's counting out all the dosh.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right, actually. I think as human beings, we really do give clues away to when we are acting up. It's almost as if we just want to be caught. Obviously, we're both raising children, and my own, you just have to look at their face. They wear the crime, and you can see the dis-ease of them doing something that they know they're not supposed to be doing.
Yes.
We just reveal it. Yeah. And we
get
more
I think we're
sophisticated as we get older, don't we?
Yeah, we get better at disguising it. We don't look quite so guilty that we've just stolen the cookie, and it's all over our lips.
Yeah.
We get a lot better and adept at disguising it. But we know when we've stepped gone off the rails. So that's where behaviours come from. Behaviours, belief, perspective, perception. Now we can follow this down here and say, where did I, as a chain of events, where did I learn this? Right? Because you and I have had children, and up until about 18 months or 2 years of age, I didn't see any evil in my kids. I didn't see any badness. I didn't see any desire to cause harm. All I just saw was gazing into the eyes and feeling unconditional love. Just the beauty of this space they're in, this alpha brainwave state. So we have to learn these things, and we learn it by watching very closely our caregivers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And the biggest one of all is, how does mum and how does dad deal with conflict?
Yeah.
He gets angry and stomps off, and mum
cries,
gathers her little chicks around her and protects them and smothers them with love. Consequently, nothing gets resolved. So the child looks here and says, "Who's winning here?" Or "Who looks like they're surviving?" Well, Dad makes a lot of noise, and whenever he does, everybody stands to attention and says, "Yes, Dad."
Yeah.
Right? Or, "I want to be like Mum. She's always calm and relaxed and always looks after us and loving." We don't see that Mum is withdrawing her power and not stepping into her power and saying, enough of that. Don't talk like that.
Yes.
And Dad's not doing anything because he's now down in the workshop going through his mind, blaming her. Why did I ever marry that woman?
I hope he's not thinking that, but he may well be. That links into last week as well, when we were talking about, our impenetrable walls that we build up around our heart. They are the times when, if you can't resolve something straight away, up comes that wall.
Yes. Yeah. And this is the modus operandi to protect ourselves from being hurt.
Yeah.
So when between 0 and 7 is when we learn these characteristics. And it might not just be mum and dad, it might be our grandparents if they're in our lives quite a lot, or uncle or aunt, perhaps an older brother, siblings. We just see how they, after 7, we start developing the mental body. The emotional body is the only one that we really build between 0 and 7, although that's changing now. And we see that our older brother, who's now got a beautiful strategy of getting out of his homework. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. When I go to school, I'm going to do that. Right?
Yeah.
So that's in a nutshell, is observing our destructive behaviors, recognizing that there's got to be a belief behind that. And on an individual basis, or a one-on-one, it's pretty easy. If you try doing this in a classroom of people, could be there for a long time.
Yeah.
While each one streams out there, well, I got this from mum and this is my belief system and whatever. So it's easier to deal on a one-to-one basis.
In your experience, especially in those group situations, do you often find there are key beliefs or perceptions that keep coming out again and again?
Yes,
holding
definitely.
people stuck. And if I was to write it down and hold it up, what I would say is, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough, or something like that. What would you say the top ones are?
You got them, all that. I am unlovable. So there is now no self-love directed at ourselves. Right?
Yeah.
Because I don't deserve love from anybody else, so why should I give it to myself? Now you're on a path of self-destruction.
Yeah.
And where was that learned? One of the elders was not loving themselves and didn't believe they deserved love, and resisted all love. Don't touch me, don't hug me, right? All of that stuff is learnt and observed.
Yes.
Right? And the little mind sees, well, that looks like a good strategy. Maybe I should. Yeah, she never seems to get upset, right? And she, whatever it is, she or he, right?
Yeah.
Or he.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that you say that it's all learned. I mean, our kids don't really have much choice in the matter because we kind of homeschool and homestead. So anything that is happening in front of our children 24/7. We don't have like early bedtimes as such. And in fact, it's not really the culture here in Portugal. Kids pretty much stay up really late. You only have to go out to restaurants to see that. They have quite late nights here. But especially when you are looking after 3 children and working from home and homesteading, you come across quite a few issues and you have to resolve them really quickly in real time. So our kids are seeing a lot of stuff. I remember growing up, I used to hear the arguments that my mum and dad had, but I was never party to the resolution of it. Like I would only hear the bits that they couldn't help but reveal. Because I think there's this idea, like in 70s England, it felt very much that anything about what's going on inside our heart was kind of kept a bit secret. So you'd only ever see the outpourings of anger or upset or insecurity or tears when it just couldn't be hidden and kept from people.
Yes. Yes.
But I don't really remember seeing the resolution. All I ever really remember seeing, and thankfully, I don't think my parents actually watch anything I do anyway. But I don't want to cast scorn on them. This is just from my memories. Obviously, they did make up. But what I observed as a child is that my mum would go off into her own little iceberg. She would go off on her own and she'd be very quiet, often cry, but you couldn't reach her. And my dad would, like you say, go off into the workshop or whatever and do something with power tools or watch motor racing. And so I never really saw the resolution. And actually, I think Carl and I might turn our kids the other way, because what they see is this like really lengthy conversation. I'm sure it's sometimes they're in the back of the car rolling their eyes. Because like every now and again, a little voice will, pop up in the back and say, I think it's okay now. You know? But yeah, you can't help but cause damage to your children, no matter how you do it, I'm guessing, you know.
And I wouldn't classify it as damage. I would see it as a learning curve.
Yeah.
Because your children are seeing both sides. They're seeing about the love and any conflict. The shadow, this yin-yang symbol comes out. We won't be complete unless we expose and bring and integrate both sides, the shadow and the light.
Yeah.
So you're giving this extraordinary lesson. Did your dad and mum, as it would be a question, did they really resolve the conflict, or did they just bury it, or use going off and going to the workshop as a distraction until this pain or trauma subsided a little bit to be more manageable, and then come back together again?
I suspect, knowing them, that there will have been times when they did resolve things, or I'm sure they would have done that quite a bit. But there are certain things that just have to become subjects that nobody talks about. Yes. Because they're impenetrable. And one of the things that I really accept and appreciate about myself, actually, is the fact that I had the courage to leave a relationship early on when I couldn't, when it just wasn't working. I'm not saying my mum and dad should have done that, but there probably were times we've been together 50 years, 50 plus years. I'm sure there were times when they couldn't work things out. And one of the benefits of having had different relationships is you get a break, and you get to learn new skills and have new conversations from a new perspective. And, my parents met when they were 17. My mum was 17. My dad was in his early 20s. Like, when I go back to that age, the tools or the experience or any wisdom that I had was like vastly limited. And I don't mean to say that to cast aspersions onto the younger generation coming up, because when I engage with them and chat with them, sometimes I'm absolutely blown away by how much wisdom is there. But yeah, I really think that if you've had kind of several breakdowns and breakthroughs, you get and especially if you've got an inquiring mind, you've got so many more tools at your disposal. And maybe you don't want to have another relationship that might, go south or north, or kind of go wrong. You might approach it slightly differently.
Yes, yeah. Interesting, Louisa, because I was brought up on a farm in England in a beautiful setting. Yeah. It was very, very organic. It was nature. We gardened. We grew our own produce and food. There was no electricity and there was no running water. It was a very simple, humble, beautiful lifestyle. And both my parents were pacifists.
Yeah.
They didn't believe in war. They didn't believe in violence. We didn't have television. We listened to the radio on Sunday night because Dad would charge up a battery and bring it in on Sunday night. That's the only external entertainment we had. Yeah. Plastic wasn't around then, so we didn't have toys that weren't made by his penknife. Very simple.
Wow.
Simple, yeah.
You can't even conceive of that in the Western world now, can you?
No. So, what's the downside of having parents like this? What do you think might be the downside for me?
You might want to go and travel the world and have lots of experiences, because you might feel that things are a bit too samey. However, to me, that sounds idyllic. In fact, that's how we're trying to raise ours. Only we cannot avoid all of the toys and stuff, because they're everywhere now. Like, toys are just everywhere. So our kids have lots to keep them amused. But we spend a lot of time together, and we have to get on together, and we play games, we hang out, and we fall out, and then we have to fall back together again. And we have strategies for coping. We tag team. And I would suspect your parents would have had to do the same.
that we were adventurous, so we would go on trips.
Oh,
But,
yeah, you actually did travel together, didn't you? Because you
yeah,
immigrated together.
we migrated to Australia and, past Africa and whatever. But the
Were there any
downside,
Were there
sorry?
downsides? Were there downsides? What
Yeah,
were
there was
the
one huge downside. I was never equipped with how to deal with conflict because there was never any there.
Oh, because they were pacifists.
They were pacifists. So
Oh,
all of that got buried. All of it got buried. I never saw them arguing. I never saw them having a tiff. Right?
oh my
I
goodness.
never have I don't believe they ever got into blows, but I never saw the conflict and I never saw any resolution.
Oh my
So
goodness.
here I am living in this bubble, this
Yeah,
extraordinary bubble of love. We move to Australia and I get drafted into the army and I
yeah.
get to see violence,
Oh my goodness.
man's inhumanity to man, the
Yes.
insanity of war and violence 24 hours a day for a year. I know now when I reflect that I had to experience that because
Yeah.
it had been completely devoid in my life, right?
Wow.
And that, as it ultimately turned out, was an extraordinary catalyst that shaped my life to
Yeah.
make me the coach that I am today, because I know what it feels like to be in that situation. I've seen both sides of the coin. The
Yes.
beautiful, loving, harmonious, cooperative, collaborative lifestyle,
Yeah.
and I've seen the exact opposite of that. So
That's fascinating. Like I wasn't raised by pacifists. I'm not saying my parents are brutal, but like pacifism wasn't, their key driver. So I did see conflict. I would see like books, like one after the other, getting hurled across the room as my mum would take apart the bookshelf. But I think, and I felt that rise up in me, that frustration of not being able to articulate what you're feeling, and you want to almost shake or punch your partner, and you don't, and so you pick something up and lob it, across the room. So I saw the kind of frustration of wanting to be heard or be seen or be felt somehow. And it's funny actually because like Carl, my husband, he had quite angry parents who would think nothing of just flying up. And so, we're trying to live, I wouldn't say we're pacifists, but we are about peace and love. And well, I guess that is pacifism, isn't it? But we don't call it that, it's just how we want to be. And yet we have this sort of residual, like, emotionalism that comes up, that we then temper down and we discuss. And I don't think our kids have observed any sort of like throwing around of stuff, but they would have felt the rise of it come up. But hopefully they will also have programmed in to their system the fact that we do always resolve it, and we nearly always resolve it the same day, sometimes even the same hour, and actually sometimes within the same 10 minutes, because we're starting to recognize that pattern and the patterns that come up, and we sometimes name them, and then we have a kind of good laugh about it. It's an uneasy laugh sometimes, and then it kind of releases. But we stuck at the conversation. I think that's the most important thing,
yes.
because actually most of our conversations when we do fall out are just different versions of the same conversation coming up again and again and again. And the people that arrive in our lives will trigger one of us in the same way that it always does. So, yeah. And right now I have been sort of experiencing moments that have taken me back to childhood, and that feeling of powerlessness when you feel like you don't have a voice, or you don't have the right to say what you want, or when I don't know, I can't quite put my finger on it. I'm still kind of sort of like going round and trying to perceive where I am.
Yes. Yeah. We will attract into our lives that which will help the healing.
Yeah.
So whenever we get triggered, it's a message. This is a call for help. There is something that is trying to come out, trying to be released and liberated in order for me to achieve and move to the next level of conscious evolution. So one of the things that I do is that whenever something like this happens, bring it on. Come on, bring it on, because
Lean into it.
breathe into it, lean into the discomfort, as
Yeah.
Brené Brown would say.
Yeah.
So,
She's great.
and it rolls off the tongue so easily. It's not so easy when you've been triggered and you're in the mire of this trauma or whatever. But it's there, and we will attract the right circumstances, the right people, the right places that will bring this out into the open.
Yeah.
And when we can say with no resistance and radically surrender into it and radically accept that this is my stuff. I don't have any right to project this on anybody else. They've got their stuff to deal with. I've got mine. This is mine. Right? Now I'm going to explore. Maybe not right now. I might need to just take a breath, or I need to say, listen, just let me get a breather out here. This is not about you. I just need to settle down a bit. And then when you have the opportunity to explore, go back into that feeling. Wow, I really got triggered then. Wow, I could feel the anger coming up. And I wanted to throw a book, but I couldn't find the Encyclopedia Britannica or War and Peace. All I got was a little thin cookbook. That's not going to do any good.
Yeah, I'm thinking about your Cause No Harm book. That actually really wouldn't cause no harm. Not because there's nothing in it, but it's very gentle. You couldn't really smack someone around the head with it, could you? I guess you could from the side, like a...
Yes, yeah. I think I might be insulted if you were to throw that at somebody.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look for it in my bookcase because I know I've got it, but I haven't unpacked all my books yet. Hang on.
Right, you might need to blow the dust off it.
No way. I'm going to have it for the next session. I will use it just to show that I still do have it.
It's probably in one of the boxes. But anyway, so everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And at some level, either conscious or unconscious, we will attract people and circumstances that will trigger this shadow side, bring it up into the open. And then we can look at that and say, this is mine. I take full responsibility, because the more conscious we get, we really have to be more and more responsible. We can't say, oh, you made me unhappy. No, I made myself unhappy, right? As a result of something you might have said or done, but I'm the cause of my unhappiness.
Yeah, because a lot of us, might be unhappy in a room, and if you're the only one in the room, then you are actually the one that's causing your unhappiness, because everything is taking place in your head, right?
You are the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Don't look for it. You are it.
No, you like me, you've moved around quite a lot, and no doubt you have noticed that you don't really escape your issues. Like one thing that we've noticed, and Carl said to me, wherever you go, there you are. And I didn't understand it for a while, but it's so funny. I've often found myself in the company of very strong women, and I've met my equal in that. Carl attracts the strongest women around him, older women, like a generation. He attracts kind of mums, like strong mums into his life that want to have a bit of a say. And so that's come into my world too, obviously, because we're together. And I remember when we came to Portugal saying, oh, okay, so we've got like this free break. Maybe we can ease off on that. And all of a sudden these replacements start showing up. Like we take on a house sit with a very strong, independent woman, and then we like move on somewhere else. And there's always these strong women and sometimes weak men in our lives. And it's quite interesting and kind of impressive how they show up. And one of the things that I'm realizing is we're getting like older, strong women or elders into our midst who are more resolved, who've dealt with more things. And so, I think you can sort of tell your trajectory based on the quality of the triggers, the recurrent triggers that are coming into your world. Are they getting better? Are they getting worse? Are they getting nicer? Are they getting easier? And I think, well, that's how I'm choosing to see our progression in our life. It feels easier. And you see that pattern, you're like, oh, we've got another strong elder, a female elder into our life. What are we still working on? I don't know. I mean, what do you keep attracting into your world? You haven't moved for a while, have you? So where do they show up if you don't move? Oh no, we've lost the connection. I was thinking that you were like sat there really still, intently listening. Guys, it looks like Rick has left the building. Sometimes the connection with the internet from Bali gets a bit wonky. And I'm also in the hills in Portugal. So here
I'm back. I'm back.
I was just talking then about how people really improve, like when you experience the same kind of person. I can't remember where you left the conversation, but I was looking at you thinking, he's really listening to this.
But he's not breathing either.
Okay, well, you weren't blinking. I was thinking, like stare him out. But I was just saying, we attract these elder women. Did you get that bit?
Yes, got that.
And I was saying we can kind of detail how well we're doing in life based on whether the kind of older influences that are coming into our life are more resolved or less resolved. So what we're noticing is we're coming up against not coming up against, that's interesting, isn't it? But we're attracting older females that want to participate and create life with us, not like create life with us, but share life with us. Yes. And impact our lives, impact each other's lives. And they are becoming more and more resolved. As we meet them, they seem to have more of their life resolved. And there seems to be more of a desire to work together to resolve everything together. And so it makes me think, yeah, we must be moving up. Things must be working out better, because some of our former stronger women were very sort of resolute. This is how it is. And if you're not, one of the women who had a lot of influence over us, and we love her dearly, she had this saying, which I can't actually say on air. Well, I could, but fit in or off. And
right.
It's a very, very strong message. You either toe the line or sling your hook. So my question to you, when I realised that you'd left the building, was how you haven't moved that much. So how do these triggering people enter your life, these recurring patterns? In the same way that wherever we go, there we are. We encounter these beautiful sort of women who have things to share. How do you encounter these people when you're staying kind of still or in the same location?
Yeah.
Is it things new or people? Or, sorry.
Loads of new people. Let me just come back. Where you are, there you are. It's like a ball and chain, right? Wherever our stuff is like a ball and chain. Wherever we go, it comes with it. The faster we run, the faster the ball follows us.
Yeah, and then if you stop, it smacks you in the back of the head, doesn't it?
Exactly. So that's one thing to recognize. There's no running away from this. Yeah. You can pretend to deny it, but it won't go away. And the way out is the way through. That's the only way through. The other thing is, as part of our conscious evolution, as a metaphor, if you think about an iceberg, right? If we're doing the inner work and we're resolving these things as they come up, we're actually metaphorically chipping away at the iceberg. And of course, the iceberg always comes up because it floats. And you chip away a bit more and it comes up a bit more. But you realize that the more work you do, the bulk of this iceberg reduces.
Yeah.
Therefore, there is not as much shadow, not as much impact, and not as much reaction to what's going on in your life. As you do that, you open the doors to... So in essence, you're vibrating at a higher frequency because you're not carrying this ton of iceberg around with you anymore. It's still there. And how I measure, we go from like this up and down like a roller coaster. As you progress, you still go on the ups and downs, but they're not so steep and they're not so shallow. And the trend is always upwards. It's the trend that matters, not this bit, as long as we keep going. So that's a good imagery to think about. You start off and it's like this, big steep valleys and mountains, and you gradually take the peak off that and level them out, and it's not so bad. And as long as we're going in the right direction, we're fine. So going in the right direction.
A bit like cognitive behavioural therapy. I remember when I was part of a hospital trial. Sorry to
go ahead.
I remember them describe. I was in a hospital trial on chronic fatigue syndrome, which I sort of experienced. And the way they were describing how we got through this was to not expend any energy at all. So we weren't having these massive peaks and troughs, because a lot of chronic fatigue syndrome people just have no energy, and then after a few days, all of a sudden they get a massive boost, and then they go out and spend all that energy, and they crash again, and so they're kind of getting like chipping away at the top and chipping around at the bottom. And I remember being really depressed by the thought of not using that energy when it came up for me. I really kind of didn't get on with that, to be fair. I really put up a protest about it and kind of ignored the advice and found my own way through. But I kind of like those peaks and troughs as well, maybe. Sorry, carry on. It just really reminded me of cognitive behavioural therapy. Sorry.
All right. So as we release some of the shadow, right, we get to experience more of the other side. Right?
Yeah.
And the other side is the light. It's the 6 heart virtues of appreciation and compassion, understanding, forgiveness, humility, bravery, and courage. We get to experience more of that. And what we're doing is we're dropping a pebble in the sea of energy, and it's going out and it's touching the right people, and they then bring the energy back in. It's like if you had a big drum of water and you just drop a pebble, the ripples would go out, touch the sides, and then they would come back in again.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we will do this if I'm an arms dealer, I will attract the arms dealer and the drug dealers and all of those criminal influences, right? And if I become more authentic and more connected to the core of who I am, I'm now radiating out this energy, and it's touching people, and they just come to you. This last 10, 14 years, I've been staggered by the quality of people that have come here. They just rock up. They just show up, sometimes having no idea why they're here. I ask them, why are you here? So,
what do they say?
Well, often they'll say, I don't know. Maybe you can tell me. All right? And I recognize a lot of them are carrying the indigo energy, which is what the energy that I dropped the pebble in here. Right? And it touches the right people. And those that are not receptive to it, it just keeps going out further. So that's why you're getting a different quality of person, and the quality of the person will be indicative of where and what you may need to move into. Or alternatively, it could be you're seeing some qualities about them that maybe you need to deal with some of that yourself. You know, we're all holding up a mirror, right? And if we can see the good qualities in people, right, we must have them inside us. Otherwise, we wouldn't recognize, we wouldn't see them. That's the good news. The bad news is when we see somebody we dislike or can't stand,
we're also looking in the mirror.
We're there. You know, are we as bad as them? Bad at being a judgment. No,
Yeah.
but we can be a little bit niggly. We can be a little bit short-tempered. We can be a little bit irritable. All of this, they're showing us what's still there. And our dislike for them is not about them at all. It's about what we don't like about ourselves
Yeah,
and that we're
definitely.
not dealing with. So when I feel this and sense this, I think, well, this is not the right moment now, but this person has just reminded me I've got a bit of that there too.
Yeah.
And maybe I need to investigate that. So in the quietude of my office or room, I'll just go in and I think, what was that feeling? What was it I disliked about that person?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do I carry some of that? Yeah, if I'm
Yeah,
being honest
you
with myself. Yeah.
do. Definitely. And woe betide the person that points it out to you.
Oh, give them hell.
um, that's interesting. I was speaking to a really lovely guy who is a walk-in soul, who walked into his life about 1996, so quite a long time ago, over 20 years ago, and right at the end, when I said, "Is there something that you'd like to share with people?" And he said, "Yeah, what's not to love?" He said, "You could." Like, you see a small child and it's really easy to just see the love that you have for them, and then and I'm paraphrasing, so I'm probably not going to say it with the same beauty that he came up with, and then he says, and you see a criminal who's done something really terrible, and what I say is, what's not to love? Like, when you look at that person, you actually need to see that it's actually like a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old hurt child that's done that, and what is not to love about that child? There was something about it that really struck me and thought, oh my goodness. And I've kind of been looking around and just seeing people's inner child and not seeing them as they are, seeing that child that was forsaken or left, or that
Yeah.
that couldn't cope.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I also
Beautiful.
noticed as a coach, which I'm sure you do too, that I get people coming to me with similar issues at the same time, almost like there's either something going on in the collective consciousness, and the people that I'm connecting with are all reflecting part of the greater whole, and also reflecting what's going on inside me. Very similar themes come up at the same time. And I was booking an appointment with my long-term homeopath, just to say, I think I'm going into that first state that I was in when I first met you, and I might be going, I'm having similar thoughts, similar recurring patterns. I'm hearing myself saying the same thing, and I'm feeling the same way. And I recognize this as a pattern, and I'd like to talk to you about it. And his comment at the bottom, when we agreed at the time and place that we were going to kind of converge, he said, important thing to remember about this pattern is you need to have lots of fun right now. In the meantime, until we meet, have lots of fun. And I was kind of blown away, because the last client I worked with yesterday, each time I'm working with someone on a monthly basis, I just check in with them before I do my next bit of work for them. And I just say, what would you like me to focus on this month? And my client had said, you know what, I'm not having enough fun. I want you to work with me from the perspective of having more fun. And immediately before I'd had that conversation with my homeopath, there's like 2 resonant things about fun. And yeah, it's definitely a message for me. It's coming loud and clear, like 5-5. It's like you get that signal straight away. But actually, I always have to then take it back out and think, well, if that's true for me, it's true for my client, it's in the consciousness of my homeopath, I think we're entering a time when people are needing more fun. And
Yes.
that kind of informs me, this is what, when like 2, 3 or 4 people are all communicating the similar message and I'm hearing it, I think that's kind of what's going on, and where we might be going. And we met up with some old friends yesterday, and the guy we met with, Mike, he was telling us about this kind of guy from Silicon Valley that noticed that if you created a program, and you probably, I remember seeing a documentary about it, and you may well have done too, but he created a program to quickly analyze all the words that are on the internet at the same time, and he could predict what was happening from the words coming up, because the collective consciousness is reflecting it. And I cannot for the life of me remember his name, but my friend jogged my memory of it. And I remember watching a documentary, and it's like whatever is going on in the collective consciousness is revealed on the internet. You know, we are leaving these clues, like you said right at the start. If a small child is going to eat the biscuit, not only do they leave clues around their face, but their face is showing that they've got something that they're a little bit uncomfortable about and a little bit proud of as well.
Yes.
So there is something coming up, and whatever's going on for you is probably happening for me. It's probably no surprise that we're having this conversation today, because whoever stumbles across this, and I can see we've had a few, you know, people like watching from a distance, you know, we interact with the people we need at that time. And I think that's marvelous.
Yes.
It's exciting. And based on that, I think we're on the way up. We're chipping on a collective iceberg right now.
Yeah, I'm the eternal optimist. As above, so below.
Yes.
So everything's happening on a macro scale. Look at a global scale, and it's happening on an individual scale as well. And reflecting on what you were saying earlier, when somebody triggers me or I see something I dislike about them, I consciously look beyond the facade, beyond the physical body, beyond the mental body, the emotional body, and I look at what's there. And what reveals itself is an infinite being, which of course you can't see, but you can sense and feel, right? And that is the same infinite being that I am. There is no separateness. So I can now see myself in them as another version of me, right? And I often say, there's just one being, and it's operating 7.8 billion bodies on this planet. So is it any wonder that there is this synergy, this coincidences, these circumstances that bring us together in the collective mind, in the collective consciousness, in this collective spirit, is that quantum jumping is about moving from here to a being that can play immaculate flamenco guitar and downloading from them. So we're downloading and quantum jumping all over the place. And it's been said that we could be having thousands of simultaneous incarnations, right, over a period of what could be 200,000 years. And it's all happening now. Now, I don't want to get too woo-woo or esoteric about that, but
feel free if you want to.
if we can see that the other person is just a physical expression of the same source that we are, and we're not separate from anything. So it's not just this body of this planet and these humanoid people. It's everything. This essence runs through everything. Call it whatever you like, whatever label you want to put on it, and we are that. Everybody is that. And when we come, this convergence that we're working towards of art, spirituality, and science, all going to come to this moot point and say, this is the truth. We can now scientifically prove that we have a spirit, right? And we can do that through art and digital art and what the sages of old. When we get to that part, it gives us a portal to a new humanity. And I sense and feel that coming.
Yeah.
So,
we're talking about people stumbling in and finding us. Stephen Wells has just like put in the chat room, I've stumbled in. So Stephen, I'd love to know, is there something going on for you right now that has kind of resonated with this conversation? Or, you know, is this like one of those little aha moments? I'm not saying like Rick and I are the big all, you know, we are and we're going to solve your problems. Not at all. We're both shaking our heads. But isn't it funny that, you know, the things that you stumble into often have a little sign or a resonance or a link into something else? Just really curious. You know, to see how we are all linking up today, other than the three of us, because it's just us at the moment, how we are all sort of co-creating what's going on where you are. Also, where are you? Are you in the UK? It's interesting, isn't it, to know, how many people around the world are linking in. I love the internet for that. It's rather good. And it's interesting that you were talking about, we can measure this scientifically. Was it you that was sharing with me like 11 years ago about the computer that had some kind of binary code, and there were computers in different parts of the world randomly selecting numbers, like a 1 or a 0, 1 and a 0, and it was randomly creating this stream of numbers. And at times of immense emotional world stress, the computers around the world started producing the same streams of numbers, and the coincidence was taken out of it. Almost hinting that there is a much bigger consciousness behind things, and that human interaction or world resonance starts to affect the machinery to show that there's no randomness. Does that ring a bell?
It's not quite. I can't even remember what I had for breakfast, let alone 11 years ago. I can't remember if I had breakfast. No, more recently, the Heartman Institute have sensors all around the world. I think they've got about 19 now.
Yeah.
And they are measuring the resonance between the Earth and humanity and the Earth.
Yeah.
And they found that just prior to the 9/11 event, there was a huge spike in the graphing of this scene before any plane had hit the towers. And they've gone on to do scientific proof now that there is something within us that recognizes something's going to happen. They have random generators that just pick up a photograph, and the heart has already responded. If it's a snake or a gory accident or a lovely fluffy bunny,
they know beforehand.
They know beforehand. And I really strongly recommend to our audience, heartmath.com, heartmath.org. They have a wealth of, they're at the cutting edge of the relationship between the heart and the brain. And so
I shall go back there.
yeah, that's on a micro scale on an individual. It's happening on a global scale. The collective consciousness is having an impact on the collective human family. So,
Lovely.
It's all there.
We're coming up to an hour, and I know you're busy and you've got lots of stuff going on. So we should probably bring this to a bit of a close. Also, my kids are going to start waking up in a minute, and boom, there goes our chat time. Or I'll be like chatting whilst having a child climb on me and another one trying to nurse on me. So how do we wrap this up? Because the title I said was, you'd suggested dealing with recurrent patterns, which I then changed to freeing yourself from recurrent patterns, because I thought, freeing yourself feels a bit more optimistic. How do we...
does.
Actually, before you wrap it up, let me just share. Stephen's come back in. He's in the UK. Of course, you stumbled across Good Morning Portugal a while ago. That's Carl's channel, my husband. Then started following you when Jenny from Holly Healthy was on a few weeks ago. Of course, I remember. I knew I'd stumbled across you. I'm wondering, is there a resonance today? Like, have you recognized any recurrent patterns? Or are you just a recurring guest, therefore a pattern in itself? Thanks so much.
Can I answer for Stephen?
Yeah, go on.
I've noticed Stephen has receding hairline. I guess he wanted to look like what he might look like in a few years' time. Nothing more complicated than that.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that, Stephen. Like Rick's diagnosis. In reference to that, I'm going to pull my hair back so I look like my dad. So you're saying, listening along for new, old, conflicting, agreeing perspectives. Fantastic. And I think actually it's really useful to keep showing up for things like that, isn't it? I love checking into other channels because, the more sources we get, I don't know, I think it just informs us. It's so much better, isn't it? So, Rick, how would you like us to wrap this up then?
Okay, from what we always cover a lot of ground and we diverge in and out, weaving this
Yeah,
pattern. But firstly, the recognition that it's our stuff that's getting
yeah,
triggered. Other people might be getting triggered as well. We don't want to take responsibility for that, but we sure want to take responsibility for ours.
yeah,
And in an appropriate time, to delve into what was that feeling and what is, because the body with all its cells is trying to teach us something. It's trying to tell us the intelligence. There is something stuck in here that needs to come out. And the direct self-inquiry is the only way I know to really relieve ourselves of this, and not be tempted to run away from it, deny it, hide it under distractions and stuff like that. So that's the full circle on how we deal with these, recognizing that they're ours, and they can, whatever we've learnt as a child can be unlearned. So
yeah,
recognize any patterns, and in that moment, just take a moment to think, oh my God, I'm not being me, I'm being my dad in that moment, or my mum, or my uncle. So I'm not being authentic, I'm not being real. And then taking ownership for who are you then? Not
yeah.
the facade, not the masks that you've put on, right? But will the real Rick Pursell please stand up?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, like we hear that actually when we're sorry, I'm starting the conversation again. We hear that when we tell our children off, don't we? We often channel our parents. And so Carl and I are saying, "Oh yeah, there you go, you're your mum again," and vice versa. But I love what you said. Will the real Rick Purcell, please stand up? So who are you really? That's my question.
That's easily answered. I'm an infinite
Infinite
being,
being.
indescribable,
Yeah.
that is animating this physical form, and I have feelings, I have thoughts, I have a life story, and I don't have an individual soul, and it's not separate from anything else. I am the collective. We are all the collective. So that's who I am.
Yeah.
Having fun in this extraordinary playground with its ups and downs. We chose the duality because in a state of oneness there's no relativity and no game. So we have created the game of duality. So there's relativity, so we can experience what we are creating, to experience our own creations, and that's it.
Boom. There you go.
I bet you're
So
sorry you asked.
no, I'm in awe, and I'm very pleased that I asked. um,
Thank you.
so I'd like to thank anyone that's watched today, in particular, lovely Stephen Wells from the UK. I, I, I've really enjoyed this conversation once again.
Me too.
I love that we can continuously go in and explore the human journey together. I'm really grateful for that. So thank you to anyone that watches this. If this resonates with you, feel free to share and connect with us. If people want to contact you, Rick, are you happy for your email to go out?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Rick
In,
at
info at rickpurcell.com.
rickpurcell.com.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And thank you for your listeners and viewers, and thank you. I am constantly honoured and greatly appreciative of having this opportunity. So thank you, Louisa.
Oh, I love you so much, and I love
It's
this.
receptive.
So, thank you very much. We're going to leave now. Rick, can you stay on the line, because I'd like to just say a few final words with you as we stop. But anyway, bye for now. If you like us, search us out and be sure to connect in with us another time. Take care.
Bye. Be well.